Ask people to think of kings and queens, and most people think of medieval times. Some may think of the UK, famous for still having a royal family. But did you know that actually 44 countries around the world still have a monarchy? Some are just in ceremonial roles, but others actually rule their nations. But why? In this video, we're going to look at a number of reasons for why different countries still have kings or queens. The first reason why countries still have a king or queen is as head of state. The head of state is defined as the chief public representative of a country, such as a president or monarch, who may also be the head of government. Countries that still have a monarch as the head of state have the king or queen as the most senior public figure in the nation. This means they officially lead the government. In most countries, the head of state is mostly a ceremonial role. A lot of countries that still have kings or queens leave the actual government decisions to the top politician, usually a prime minister or president. Examples of countries like this include the United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand. However, in other countries, the monarch is the head of state, takes control of the government. These countries have less democratic systems, and the king or queen is often the de facto ruler of the country. Examples of nations like this include Saudi Arabia, Oman, and Swaziland. A second reason why countries still have kings and queens is to act as a ceremonial figurehead for the nation. Many countries that have retained their monarchies have done so because they feel they represent the nation. Royalty are often seen as something that nations bond around, and they act as a central figure that upholds the nation's values. All countries that still have royalty see the monarch as the symbol of the nation itself. Often they feel like the kings or queens link the country to its past. Monarchies are also involved in ceremonies that are important to the nation, and this is another reason that countries retain them as figureheads for the country. Kings and queens often play a prominent role in civil and political events that are important to the country and the way it's governed. Many countries still have monarchies because they feel their ceremonial role represents the country. Royal families often go back centuries. Another reason why countries still have monarchies is because of the legacy of their histories. Historically, kings and queens were believed to be God's representatives sent to rule a country. They were directly governing the people and often controlled much of the country's land. Although in many countries the monarchy no longer directly rules the nation, countries still have kings and queens, essentially because they are left over from their past. Many historic nations have had monarchies, however, most have removed them, either through revolutions, constitutional changes, or abdication. There are now far fewer countries that still have royal families. Countries that have not removed their monarchies often have long histories of support for their king or queen. Countries such as the United Kingdom, Spain, and the Netherlands all feel their royal families are a key part of their historical legacy. Another reason why countries still retain kings and queens is to have a neutral figure at the head of the state. In many countries, the monarchy stays above political divides. They do not interfere with the day-to-day running of the country or share their opinions on political matters. The role of the monarchy is to exercise neutrality and to be seen to represent the core values of the nation. Examples of countries like this include Denmark and the UK. Even in countries where the monarch is the direct ruler and does control the government, they are still seen as being more of a neutral figure that acts in the best interests of the country. Many countries where the monarch is the direct ruler have deep political, ethnic, religious, and tribal divisions. The king or queen is seen as being the arbitrator between these groups and as a key mediating influence. Examples of countries like this include Jordan and Belgium. Another reason why countries still have kings and queens is to have a person who represents the nation leading it. In many countries, the monarch is seen to uphold the values that are important to that country. They also represent the history, culture, and beliefs that are seen as being at the core of the nation. As well as being the representative of a nation at home, royalty are often used to promote a country abroad. Often they travel internationally on official visits and use their role as the head of state or ceremonial leader of a country to build political and economic ties. Examples of countries like this include Norway, Spain, and the United Kingdom. In some countries, the king or queen is key to the nation's founding. In these countries, they are seen as a human embodiment of the country's struggles and independence. This is true in countries such as Saudi Arabia, Oman, and Brunei. Kings and queens often take on traditional roles in societies. Some countries still have monarchies because they feel they link the country to its traditions and play an important role in retaining the country's heritage. All kings and queens take part in ceremonies and rituals that are important to their country. These can be central to the culture of a nation, and many countries still have monarchies because they feel it is a key part of their traditional way of life. In countries that still have a monarchy, usually there are traditions relating to different members of the royal family. Often dating back centuries, these traditions can be important to how a country functions and relate to varied parts of their system of government. This is another reason why some countries retain their monarchies. Royalty is by nature traditional. Countries that still have royal families often highly value their part in the traditional life of the nation. Another reason why countries still have royalty is because the king or queen still exercises significant political control. Although the majority of monarchies in the world are constitutional, meaning they do not directly control the government, there are still countries in the world with absolute monarchs. This means they govern the country by diktat, often with little or no democracy. There are 44 countries in the world that still have kings or queens. 3 of these are absolute monarchies. Often these countries still have kings because the royal family still has extensive control over the country, including the government, armed forces and the judiciary. Although in these countries the monarchy often has broad public support, a major reason they still have monarchies is because there's a lack of accountability in their political systems. A final reason why countries still have kings and queens is to promote tourism. Some countries are world famous for their monarchies. The royal family of the UK, for example, is followed all over the world. Countries that still have monarchies often retain them because it brings tourists to the country. People travel from all over the world to see royal sites, attend events, and learn the history of a country's kings and queens. As well as being a draw for tourists to come from abroad, monarchies also travel overseas to promote their countries. When kings and queens engage on official visits abroad, it often gets significant media attention in the countries they visit. Monarchies often help to raise the profile of their country, and this can help encourage tourism. Tourism is a huge part of many nations' economies. As countries compete for the international tourists, some find that having an old and established royal family, famous around the world, can be a major reason visitors come.